To preface this all, it was Valentine's Day, and my girlfriend and I are college students at a small school in Kentucky. Due to the way that the college works, it's hard for a lot of students to afford to keep up with having their cars on campus. This means that you typically have to walk everywhere, unless you have a bike. I was amongst the unlucky this semester. The evening had rolled around, and we were thinking of semi-romantic things we could do together. We arrived upon ordering food off of UberEats. Not exactly the most glamorous, but hey, I offered to pay. Most of the restaurants were closed, but Taco Bell was still open, so naturally we ordered from there. Unbeknownst to us, though, there were no active drivers at that time. Probably due to the road conditions, as at the time it was freezing and quite snowy. The app defaulted to the setting where you can go walk and pick it up. There wasn't an option to cancel it, so I decided I would walk the 1.5 miles to go pick up the food. I know most people at this point wouldn't be keen on walking in the snowy, freezy conditions in that time of night, but I'm a broke college student who just spent his last few dollars on food. So, with a hug and a kiss from my girlfriend, I started off on my long journey to get the food. Walking through campus at night isn't a problem for me, since I'm a 5'9" male, but when you make it through the campus and into the residential areas of town, that's when things do tend to get sketchy. I had made it through campus and was about a quarter of the way to my destination, when in the distance I saw another man walking down the streets. Initially, two things put me at unease. The first one being that he was wearing one of those long trench coat things that you typically associate with someone doing something sketchy, and the other being the conditions out. I mean, logically, no one should be walking around in these conditions, as they were literally cold enough to freeze the sweat in your hair. I pushed these thoughts back though, assuming he was either in a similar situation to me, or maybe he just really enjoyed the weather. I did switch sides of the street though, as I'm a tad bit socially awkward and hate talking to random people I don't really know. We both continued our walks and walked right past each other. It seemingly went off without a hitch. Neither of us acknowledged the other and just kept walking along. Being the wary person I was though, I decided to look over my shoulder often in these kinds of situations. He was walking the same direction he had been. Good. I kept walking, throwing the occasional glance over my shoulder for safety. After about 2 minutes though, after the mystery man and I had passed each other, I cast another glance over my shoulder and noticed he was now walking in my direction and a bit faster than I was walking. This creeped me the fuck out, and I started to walk a bit faster as well. I couldn't flat out run because of the road conditions. They were too icy. At this moment, I noticed the man begin to pick up speed too, until we were side by side on opposite sides of the street. When he caught up to me, he started yelling at me, and I saw something fall from the sleeve of his jacket, like he had been concealing it. Only it fell to the ground, making a large clatter, like a piece of metal bar or a large metal knife. At this moment, I grasped the danger of the situation, and my fight-or-flight instincts kicked in. Ready to defend myself, I pulled out my pocket knife as I noticed him starting to make his way across the street. It was at this moment I said something to the effect of, "Hey, look man, I don't want any trouble. I've got a knife on me." The man stopped dead in his tracks and said, "Oh, I thought you were someone else who just attacked me." I played it off cool. "It seems you've got the wrong person, my dude." He said a quick yeah and retreated to his side of the street, then continued in the other direction. I thought I was safe. I continued on my trek to Taco Bell, but after this experience I was all the more wary because of the potential of having two creepy men out on the streets. As I was looking over my shoulder, I noticed the man from before on the same path that I was. I just walked as fast as I could to the Taco Bell while throwing glances over my shoulder, except at some point, the man just mysteriously vanished. I made it back to the college campus without any more events, but needless to say, I had my hand on my pocket knife at all times. To this day, I have no clue what his true intentions were, but I know they certainly weren't any good. This happened like 2 years ago. It might not be that bad, but I still get nightmares about it. I was in 8th grade at the time, and I go to this big public school near my house. It was my first day, and so the teacher assigned me to sit next to a boy who looked nice and outgoing. So I took a seat there, and immediately he was chatty, asking me about my name, age, etc. He was really friendly and seemed quite normal. After a few days of sitting next to him, I felt bad vibes around him, but I never really gave it much thought. After 2 months of sitting next to him, he was trying all sorts of things to get closer to me, and I was uncomfortable with his actions, but I did not confront him. I was naive at the time and not very good with confrontations. John, my guy friend, was assigned to sit next to us though. Now I was sitting in the middle of both of them. John and Dan grew close, and I had no problems with that. Then John was going to eat lunch with us when he brought Dan with him. I was surprised that Dan was now tagging along with us, which he had never done before. I tried not to pay attention to it. Dan took a seat next to me, not next to John, but next to me. I was a little confused, but I brushed it off as well. And that's when things started to get a little creepy. He moved closer to me like he was trying to let our bodies touch, but as a Catholic girl, I was always told to stay my distance with boys. I moved a little bit away from him, but he didn't stop. He just kept getting closer. And that's when my friend told me she needed assistance in the bathroom and that I should go with her. I frantically accepted it. Turns out my friend noticed how creepy he was. I still couldn't really do anything about it though. Maybe he was just having a crush on me or something. I kept my distance from him though, and that's when he started to get really creepy. One day I got very sick and couldn't go to school. I stayed home and watched some TV, and even checked my Facebook, and that's when I saw it. Dan had sent me a friend request, which I never accepted, and a message request. Curious as to what it was, I opened it. I saw there were hundreds of messages from him. He was asking why I was not at school, what happened to me. He was also getting mad and cursing me, calling me a bitch for ignoring his messages. All of these hundreds of messages were sent the same day. I felt sick to my stomach. I had never experienced anything like this before, but I didn't tell my parents because I was scared that they wouldn't allow me to go out with my friends anymore. That night, I was still pretty shaken up when I received another new message from him, and that message still haunts me to this day. Hey, I hear you were sick. I'm really sorry for getting mad at you. I thought you were just avoiding me. So, feel better and drink your medicine. I know you haven't eaten dinner yet, so please eat dinner as well so you can feel better sooner, and then I can see you again at school. And that sent a chill all over my body, because I hadn't told anyone I was sick, and my parents didn't tell anyone either, not even my own teacher. The fact that he knew I hadn't eaten dinner yet was so weird, because it was 11 p.m. and people usually eat at 8. Suddenly I felt like I was being watched and closed my curtains. I still didn't tell my parents. I was trying to make myself believe that maybe it was just a coincidence. I got better eventually and was on my way to school. I didn't want to sit next to him anymore, but that wasn't an option because my teacher was pretty strict when it comes to sitting arrangements. I was walking to school when I saw him walking behind me. A sick feeling came to my stomach again. I just fastened my pace, and he did the same. I was so scared, but finally I reached the school entrance and ran. I saw my friend and told her everything. She advised me to stay away from him, and I did, but that never stopped him. That's when Valentine's Day arrived. Our school made a big deal about Valentine's Day, so they canceled all the classes that day but still asked us to go to school and made us wear red clothes. I just wore black jeans and a red plain shirt with a black cardigan, nothing really fancy. Then I get a message from him asking if he could take a picture of me and print it so he could watch it while he falls asleep. He sent it with a winky face. I couldn't tell what he meant by that, so I ignored him. I saw him staring at me while touching his private parts. I was so weirded out that I reported him to our teacher, but they didn't do anything. So my friends just made sure that he stayed away from me. When a guy tried to give me chocolates and flowers because they liked me, Dan threw angry glares at me. I ignored him again. When I was on my way to my classroom to get my bag because I'd forgotten it there, I saw Dan just sitting there. His face was blank. We were both alone in the classroom because our classmates were busy in the gymnasium. I was scared, but I put on a brave face and walked to my bag. He saw me and immediately screamed, "You're a slut like your mother. Why won't you like me back? God wants us to be together." I was so scared that I froze on the spot. He was looking at me with such anger I felt like I was going to die. But he stormed off. I was relieved. I left after that and cried in front of my friends. That was the last straw, because I told my parents finally, and they reported him. The school just said they were going to talk to him, which they never did because he didn't show up at class the next day. We heard he quit school and was working at a small convenience store nearby. That's not the end, though. He made a fake account with his name, but his picture was me. He sent me another message, a screenshot of his phone. The wallpaper was me as well. The picture that he sent me, though, was not familiar to me. I never took that picture. It was a shot from my window while I was in my bed studying. I had my earphones on. I was wearing a large shirt with no bra and just shorts. He captioned it with a, "I hope to lay next to your bed." I was really freaked out. I cried even. I told my mom about it, but she just told me to block him because we were going to move out of town in a few weeks. So I did. He just couldn't take the message. A year after that incident, I was now in the 9th grade, but we hadn't moved because there was a problem in the new house. And that's when he created another fake account with my friend John's name and picture on it. I accepted it because John had been talking about creating a new Facebook profile a week ago, so I just assumed it was his. Now Dan, who was pretending to be John, messaged me and said this: "I just want to explain, I dropped out of school because of you. I told my parents that we broke up and that I can't stand seeing you. I'm also sorry for shouting at you that day, but I want us to be together, to have lovely sex and children. If you can't take me back, it's fine to me. Just don't block me again because I think I will kill myself if you do that. Okay? Love you." I was confused at first because I thought John was messaging me, but then it sunk in. This was Dan. I immediately got sick to my stomach, so much so that I vomited in the toilet. I didn't know what my next move should be. If I blocked him, what if he actually killed himself based on his mental state? Instead of blocking him, I asked my parents to reach out to his, and they did. His parents were so embarrassed they apologized to us. I heard he's now at a mental facility getting the help he needs. And me? Well, we moved out, and I cut all connections with Dan. I started a new life, and now I take caution as to whom I should be friends with as well. Got some Dunkin' Donuts this morning, and it brought back this story to mind. I figured I'd share it here. During high school and college, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts for about 7 years and bounced around to a few different locations. I was used to working at the Dunkin' in my town, where we would get the yeast rings delivered periodically and frost them ourselves as needed. I transferred to a new shop about a half hour from my house, with all the same responsibilities, except for the donuts. They were delivered by corporate. They arrived frosted almost perfectly already. They looked like the plastic donuts they show in commercials, always round and not squished together, and they would dip them in frosting so it was evenly spread and neat. It was a busy Saturday morning and was close to Valentine's Day, so we had a fresh order of brownie batter donuts delivered that morning. We were slammed, which was normal for a weekend, so it wasn't out of the ordinary to see my manager, whom I'll call Jeremy, running around completely stressed out. When he first ran past me, I didn't think anything of it. I continued making sandwiches at the sandwich station. He rushed by carrying a pastry tray, and I watched him begin frantically throwing something in the trash, looking worried as all hell. At first I laughed. "Jeremy, what the heck are you doing?" He straightened out and looked absolutely beside himself. I had never seen Jeremy look so lost, so I asked what was going on and if something was wrong. "Someone filled the brownie batter donuts with staples." He told me he'd gotten a phone call from corporate that one of the stores in our chain, which contained 10, had somehow discovered multiple staples in every donut in their order. There were at least 48 donuts for our store, and more or less for the other 9 depending on their sales. They told Jeremy we had to get rid of the most recent delivery, because whoever put the batter in the filler dumped a ton of staples in as well. Thankfully, we hadn't sold all of the previous order yet from that morning, because it was still relatively early, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was going to be sick. What if a child had gotten one of those? I pictured some family sitting at home on a Saturday morning, going out for some drinks and donuts, and imagining everything else that could have happened after. I never found out what came of it, and as far as I know, neither did my boss. I can only assume nothing happened to the person who did it, because I thankfully never heard anything about anybody suffering on the news. Makes me wonder if they covered it up or something. I hope they were able to find the asshole who did it in the end, though. When I was 16 years old, I decided to surprise my parents with a bouquet of flowers for Valentine's Day. We've always celebrated this as a family holiday rather than a romantic one. I didn't have a car to drive to a florist, but my high school was within walking distance of a hospital boasting a gift shop that sells floral arrangements. Between classes during the week of Valentine's Day, I set off for the hospital by my lonesome, cutting across campus to walk through a network of side roads populated with specialty doctors' offices that keep odd hours. The sort of buildings where traveling doctors mainly hold surgery consultations or perform small procedures a few times a month. The trip there passed without incident. As I was walking back through said deserted roads with a vase of flowers in tow, I noticed an unkempt 1990s car close behind me. While my memory of the car is hazy, I'm left with the impression that there were at least 2 men within, whose faces I could not see. Initially, I assumed that the driver was simply afraid of hitting me, the reason they weren't passing by. I made a point of dramatically trudging further into the grassy shoulder of the road, demonstrating to them they could safely drive ahead. They still refused to pass me by though, continuing to creep along behind at a slow pace. Beginning to suspect that the driver was more interested in me than a destination, I began to walk faster. The car confirmed my suspicions by matching my speed. Despite the impracticality of my shoes and the threat of water spilling from my vase, I commenced to run as fast as I possibly could. They hit the gas and again matched my speed. I realized at this point that the car was following me, that there was no one in sight to notice, and that I needed to get away. I bolted into the first parking lot that I saw. The car turned in after me. Despite there being only 2 or 3 cars in the spacious front parking lot, and there being no other sign of activity at the office, this car did not stop to park in the numerous spaces available there. The driver instead opted to pursue me into the partially under construction back portion of this lot, behind the office. It passed every available parking space to corner me against a pile of debris and rubble from the construction, coming to a diagonal stop less than 3 feet away. Before anyone could emerge from the vehicle, though, I somehow managed to scale the small prominence of rubble against my back, vase in hand, and jumped from its peak to land painfully on the other side. It was fortunately a plot of undeveloped land within sight of my high school campus. I quickly took a peek back over my shoulder to see if they were still in pursuit. The car had sped off after I reached the top of the rubble pile and was now nowhere in sight. They had not parked in the lot at all. They had no business there. The driver was following me. I sprinted at top speed and didn't stop until I was soaked with sweat in the dead of winter, panting in the student lounge among my classmates. They didn't seem to give a damn when I told them what happened, possibly because our hometown is supposedly a human trafficking capital and the crime rate is outrageous. Although I'm convinced that this was something more informal than human trafficking, as the dilapidated car suggested poverty, and I've read human trafficking usually arises through grooming and not being suddenly snatched off the streets. In retrospect, I probably should have told an adult, alerted campus security, and called the non-emergency line of the local police station, but I was young, foolish, insecure, and afraid of getting in trouble for leaving campus when I didn't have a signed permission form permitting me to do so. I kept trying to convince myself I had misread the situation or was somehow overreacting. I don't know what I would have even told the police had I called them, as I was entirely ignorant on the subject of cars and couldn't have identified the make of it had I been asked. I couldn't see the faces of the occupants either. I was worried that my parents would restrict my already extremely limited freedoms if they knew I had been in any danger. I feel horrible for never having told anyone, and earnestly hope that my secrecy never led to someone being hurt or killed. I believe the only missing people aside from runaway children, or elderly adults with dementia in this city right now though, are men, aside from one woman a few decades ago. Whoever followed and tried to trap a 16-year-old girl with flowers at a doctor's office just before Valentine's Day of 2016. Let's not meet.